everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I did have on my TBR that I've since removed and the reasons why. I think I saw Michaela Reed's do a video like this and it really got me thinking about all the books that I've added over the years and decided to not read for some reason or another. So I hope you find this video interesting. Let me know if you've read any of these books before and if you think I should re-add them to my TBR, because there are a few that I'm a little unsure about that I feel like I might read one day. So I did used to have around 200 books on my Goodreads TBR, which for me is just ridiculous. I do not read at a pace that's fast enough to keep up with that. So earlier this year I decided to go through, take off a load of books that I just wasn't interested in anymore. And I'm now down to 146, so that's with removing some and also reading some, obviously. I'm happy-ish with 146, but I would like to get down to like 100 maybe next year. I just feel like that's a little bit more manageable and it's not as off-putting. So first off, let's talk about some of the mystery thrillers that I added and have removed. So the first one that I have is What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. I think I added this book immediately when I first saw it on Goodreads. The premise is very interesting. It's about three friends who used to play in the woods when they were kids. One of the friends ended up being attacked in the woods really badly, but she survives, and the friends all testify in court against this one man who's a serial killer, and they are deemed to be heroes for their part in putting this guy in prison. However, they were actually lying when they did this testimony, and 20 years later I think the lies start catching up with them and one of them wants to tell the truth, one of them wants to find out what really happened. So it's basically trying to figure out this mystery of what really happened in the woods that day. I think I just added this book straight away because it sounded super interesting, but then I found out that it was based on a real life true crime case and I immediately knew which one it was likely to be. So I ended up just googling what happened because I wasn't that fussed about reading it, knowing that it was probably going to go in a certain way, and I was right. So I probably would have guessed it very early on anyway, and I don't feel like I'm missing out from not reading it. So yeah, I mean, I've heard that it's got pretty good reviews and it was nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award, so it might still be a good book. I just think that I would have found it too predictable and probably would have given it like 3 stars, so what's the point? The next one that I removed from my TBR was Not a Happy Family by Shari Lapena. Shari Lapena is a very popular thriller author and I have read one of her previous books, which was The Couple Next Door. I think I gave that one 3 out of 5. I didn't find it to be like spectacular, but I had a good time reading it. I read a big chunk of it in one day. I think I listened to it on audiobook. So I added this one because she's very popular on YouTube and I think I saw quite a few YouTubers reading it and giving it a good review. However, it follows the trope of a few siblings trying to get money from the parents, like a will situation, and I just don't find that very interesting. I don't usually love books where money or financial gain is the main focus and I just find them kind of boring. So I ended up just removing this one because I don't need to read another thriller about money when I know that I already don't like it. The next book that I no longer want to read is The Maid by Nina Prose. This was a very popular book last year and I think it won the Goodreads Choice Awards for the mystery thriller category. However, I saw that the main character, the maid, who is called Molly, is possibly neurodivergent, but it's never specifically mentioned, and there were some reviews that questioned the ethics of that and the portrayal of Molly as a character, and that it was kind of inconsistent. So I thought that I would probably find it quite annoying to read if that was the case, so I'm just not going to bother. Although I am still intrigued to read some mystery books that are set in hotels. I've only read one book that was like this and it was called The Last, which was like a murder mystery / post-apocalyptic book, which I thought had loads of potential, but I just didn't really love it. There's also a game that I want to play, which I can't remember what it's called. Let me look. Oh, it's called This Bed We Made, and basically you play as a maid and you have to like snoop around people's hotel rooms to figure out a murder mystery. So I feel like that is going to give me all the murder mystery hotel vibes I need, and I don't really need to read The Maid. Another book that I've finally decided to remove from my TBR after having it on for years is The Plot by Jean Hanff Karelitz. I actually owned this book brand new from Waterstones, so it's kind of annoying that I've decided to DNF it forever, but I've had it for so long and I've just got no interest in picking it up. I read the first chapter for a try a chapter challenge that I gave myself. It was fine, but nothing has made me want to pick it up since. I say that I want to read it every autumn because it's like dark academia vibes, but I just haven't. I didn't last year, I didn't this year. I thought, right, that's it. you've had too many chances, you don't really want to read it anymore. So I've basically decided to put it on my Vinted or something and just get rid of it, because I clearly don't want to read it enough to keep it. To be fair, the idea of a guy stealing somebody else's manuscript isn't the most like interesting premise to me. I think that it'll be fine, but I'm just not super excited by that. I've got so many other books that I would much rather read than this book, so I'm going to put it on my Vinted and give it to somebody who actually wants to read it, rather than having it sit on my shelves for another year or years to come. And I think the last mystery thriller that I added and then deleted was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This I think I added because it's meant to have a speculative element to it that's meant to be quite fun, and it reminded me a lot of the golden age of mystery thrillers, like Girl on the Train, Unreliable Narrator, that kind of thing. So I was really excited for this, and then I saw that it was getting really mixed reviews and some people were hating it, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll be one of the people that loves it. And then one day I just decided to Google what happened. So I ended up finding out what happened. I don't think I'm missing out. I think I would have found it kind of annoying and strange. Sometimes I've added a book to read just because I want to know what happens, rather than like I'm excited to read this book. It's just I want to know the plot of this book. So if I can find it online, then sometimes that satisfies me enough that I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm glad I've not read it. I'm glad I didn't waste my time. At least I know now what happened. And sometimes that's all it needs. So the next two books are by the same author, Hanya Yanagihara. The first one is The People in the Trees, and then the second one is To Paradise. So I read A Little Life back in, I think 2020, maybe 2021. And I did really enjoy it, but it took me like a month to read it. Even though it was enjoyable, I liked the characters, and it had a lot of like dark, disturbing trauma things that I really enjoyed to read about, which is kind of weird. So I added these books just as like an auto thing of like, oh, I liked the author, she had good writing, I'll read these two. But to be fair, the premises are not as exciting to me. Let me just read a little bit about what The People in the Trees is about. So it's set in 1950, and a doctor and an anthropologist go on an expedition to a remote island in search of a rumoured lost tribe. And when they get to this island, they end up discovering that the tribe, or some people on the island, have the ability to live really long lives, and they start trying to test this scientific theory that they can create eternal life. So in order to do so, they start doing some really cruel things, and it's meant to be a lot about ethics and morality, which is interesting to me. However, it's something to do with the like cruelty side of it that I'm not sure I really want to read. I think there's some animal cruelty, there's probably going to be cruelty to the tribes people, and again, it had been sat on my shelf for a few years. Again, I bought it new from Waterstones, and yeah, I just never picked it up. So I decided to just admit defeat and admit that I'm never going to read it. And then same with To Paradise. That is a really long book which follows like 3 completely different time periods, and I think it's just a little bit overwhelming. I've seen a lot of mediocre reviews, and I just think that for such a long book, which is going to require so much of my effort, I don't think it's going to pay off. So after a long time of deliberating, I took both of these books off my TBR. The next few are books by authors that I've read and loved before. So I just kind of added another book, but I just don't think I want to read it. So the first one I'm questioning as to whether I want to read it or not, and that is Sundial by Catriona Ward. I have had this on my TBR for a while, and then I heard that it has quite disturbing animal cruelty in there, and animal cruelty is just one of those things that I struggle with quite a lot in books. It really, really upsets me. Any animals dying, any sort of nasty scenes with animals, it just makes me cry. So I heard that this one has a little bit of that, and I swiftly got rid of it. However, I recently read Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward, and I've read The Last House on Needle Street, and I gave both of those books 5 stars, and I feel like this one might be a 5-star as well. But if it's going to be gross towards animals, then I'm not sure how I feel about that. So let me know in the comments if it is really bad or if it's kind of tolerable. I think it's worse for me when it's a animal that we've grown to know and love, and if something happens to that animal, then that I can't cope with that. And then if somebody is like deliberately hurting animals, that upsets me too. So if this book features any of that, let me know. But for now, it's off the TBR, but if it's kind of doable, then I may re-add it. On a similar line to the animal cruelty thing, this one really upsets me as well, but it's The Deep by Nick Cutter. I loved The Troop, which did also have a bit of animal cruelty in, but I feel like I coped with that one okay. This sounds like such a good book. It's basically about a guy who goes on like a submarine, and I think some creepy, scary shit happens, and it sounds totally up my street. But I heard that there is an animal in this book that gets hurt, which is a real shame because I was so excited to read this book. The Troop was a 5-star for me, and this one sounded even better. And then the last one that's kind of animal cruelty based is Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I'm not sure how to say her last name, but this one is about a woman who starts thinking that she might be turning into a dog. Yeah, I've heard that it gets a little bit too graphic and gross, so I imagine she's gonna start like trying to kill things in her garden, and yeah, I just don't know if I can handle reading that, so I reluctantly took this one off because again, this sounded like a really weird, wonderful book that I would probably really love, but the animal thing, I just can't get over it. I can't get over it. And then a few more by authors that I've already read and loved. This one is Recursion by Blake Crouch. So I read Dark Matter and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, I think, and I had this one on my TBR for a while. He writes really interesting sci-fi stories, but I think I've had this one on my TBR since like 2019, 2020, and something about it just wasn't drawing me to it. I read in the reviews that it wasn't as good as Dark Matter, and I just thought I'm probably going to feel underwhelmed with it, and it's not really fair of me to go into a book expecting to be underwhelmed. So yeah, I took that one off as well, but it's got quite a high rating on Goodreads and it's meant to be really clever, and I'm sure it is, but so many books, so little time, you know. I'm trying to be a bit more fussy, and if I've not read it for years, then when am I going to read it, you know? And then another one, which I can't actually remember why I removed this, but it's Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata. I read Earthlings, which I gave 5 stars, and I've got Convenience Store Woman still on my TBR, so there's always a chance that I'll add this back. Let me check why I removed it. Did it have bad reviews? I don't know why I removed it, but when I read Convenience Store Woman, if I still have an urge for more of her writing, then I will probably add this back. I genuinely can't remember why I got rid of it, so I mean, I'm not going to add it back right now, but it's basically a short story collection, and I'm sure they're probably quite good actually. So that one might be added back at some point, maybe. And then another one which I was actually kind of highly anticipating is The Last Word by Taylor Adam. I read No Exit, I think last January, so 2022, and I gave it 5 stars. It was one of the most like fast-paced, action-packed thrillers that I've ever read, and I really loved it. So I saw that this one was coming out, and it's basically about a woman who wrote a negative book review about this guy's book, and I think he ends up stalking her and trying to kill her or something. The only thing that's put me off this book is that so many people say that it gets very ridiculous at the end, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I kind of liked that about No Exit, that it just kept going even though you thought that it was over. But for some reason, the comment about it being a bit ridiculous and over the top put me off. Sometimes that can be a bit annoying, and yeah, it put me off too much, and I just don't think I'm going to read it. I don't feel like I'm missing out too badly, and if I am, let me know in the comments. But yeah, if it's going to be like a bit silly, then I just think I'll probably find it irritating, so I took that one off. The next one is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I added this one because I heard so much hype about this book, and I thought that this might be my entrance into Romantasy. I have read one before from Blood and Ash. I kind of enjoyed reading it, but on reflection, I didn't really like the romance and like the tropes, and it started getting a little bit vampire-y towards the end, which I didn't really like either. So I thought this one might be a good one. It's about dragon riders, and it's about a war college and stuff. However, I watched a few people's reviews, and I just don't think I like this book, unfortunately. I don't really like romance that's set in like a fantasy setting. I like more of a realistic, sad romance. I don't think it's for me. It's a long book, and I've heard that the world building isn't great, so I think I wouldn't like that side of it. But again, I just don't think it's fair of me to read it and probably give it like a 1 or a 2 star when I may as well just not bother, you know. And then another popular one that I removed was Verity by Colleen Hoover. So I had this on my TBR for a while. Again, I bought this one, had it on my shelves, but I feel like I've read quite a lot of thrillers now, and I saw a lot of hype around this one, and the more that I thought about it, the more I decided that I probably wasn't gonna like it, because I was worried that it was like really good for people that hadn't read thrillers before or that were coming from like a romance background because it had a lot of romance in it, but for people that have read quite a lot, I worried that I'd find it kind of predictable, kind of uninteresting with like a heavy focus on the romance. And then I started seeing all that controversy about Colleen Hoover. Now I did read The End of Us? The End of Us? I don't think that's what it's called, is it? It Ends With Us. And I actually really liked that book. I gave it 4.5 stars, I think. So it's not that I like widely hate Colleen Hoover, not at all. I've read that one book by her and really liked it, but I just don't think that I'm the audience for this book, and I just worry that I would give it a really low rating, and I don't think it's fair. The next one that I have is a classic, and it's Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. I had this book on my shelf for a long time. I think I've still got it because I think my boyfriend still wants to read it, but I think I just wanted to read it because it was like a classic, and I see it on the same wavelength as like 1984, Slaughterhouse-5, and I've read quite a few of those books and liked them, so I wanted to read this. But this one is just a bit too long. It's about war. Sometimes I find war a little bit boring, and I just don't think I'm gonna love it as much as I love books like 1984. Let me just check what this book is actually about. I think it's meant to be like a satire, comedic kind of take on war. So it says that his own army keeps increasing the number of missions that the men must fly to complete their service. But if he makes any attempt to excuse himself from the missions, he'll be in violation of Catch-22. Is this the reason why Catch-22 is a phrase? Yes, it was coined by him. I guess it's meant to be an interesting, groundbreaking book, but I don't know enough about the book and the plot to be excited by it. All I know is that there's this Catch-22. I'm getting bored just like trying to explain what the book is about, so I obviously don't want to read it. I'm sure it's a great book, but just not a great book for me. The next few are in a similar vein. It's books that I added when I was in a bit of a phase where I wanted to read all the dark, disturbing books in the world, but on reflection, do I want to read them? Probably not. So the first one is Tamper by Alyssa Nutting. So this book is about a really attractive 20-something-year-old female teacher who has an obsession with her 14-year-old male students, and I thought this would be kind of like My Dark Vanessa, which is one of my favourite books from this year. However, I feel like this is more of a gratuitous, just weird description of this woman's fantasies and how she's acting out on them in a very abusive way, with like little to no commentary, because you're following from her side, not the victim side. So I just don't want to read that. I'm not saying that it's a bad book, maybe it does have a little bit more depth to it, but what I've seen, it's kind of more to shock people, and I don't feel like I need to be further shocked by that because it's already shocking enough. So yeah, that one I got rid of because I don't want to read that shit. And then the next one, which is similar, is The End of Alice by A.M. Holmes. This is about another female paedophile, and she writes letters to this imprisoned male paedophile in prison, and they start writing about their nasty little fantasies, and I think the imprisoned guy tries to encourage her to act out on her fantasies for real. Now this one says that it's part romance, part horror. Where's the romance? Is the romance between the two paedophiles? Because I don't want to read that. Again, I'm not saying that this is a bad book. Maybe it's very like interesting and probably is quite thought-provoking. It'll just make me kind of sad, so I'm not gonna put myself through it. And then the last book, which I think again was on like a disturbing list but isn't quite the same as that, is A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. And I think I did this because I like the cover. I like the pink. It sounds very weird. It's about this couple who have an obsession with one of his work friends, but then I saw some kind of mixed reviews about it, and this is another one that I decided just to Google and read the ending of, so that's what I did. It might have been fun to read, but I don't really feel bad that I didn't read it. There's a lot of like 3 stars floating around for this book, so I just thought that maybe I couldn't really be bothered reading it. I just wanted to know what happened. The next book is another one that I did own physically and just decided to get rid of because I had it for way too long, and that was Vox by Christina Doucher. This one is about a dystopian society where women are only allowed to speak 100 words a day, and I thought it would be a very interesting book, but I've heard that the feminist commentary is kind of lacking and it's not very well developed. It doesn't really have much to say, so that's the reason why I don't want to read it anymore. I just figured that I would read something else. I want something that's kind of clever and thought-provoking when it comes to dystopia, so yeah, I'm just not going to read this one either. And I think I've still got this. I need to sell it or give it to a charity shop or something. The next one is a horror book that I added because I read what was it called? Brother by Anya Alborn. I really loved that book. It was about a boy who was born into a serial killer family. It was very dark and it was very gory and graphic, but it was really fun to read and I loved the ending of that book. So this author has quite a few other books and I added Seed to my TBR. However, I've got rid of it because it's a possession story and I'm not the biggest fan of paranormal possession stuff. Not to say that I hate all of it. I read Come Closer by Sarah Gran last year and I loved that. I gave it 5 stars and that is all about possession. It's not a trope that I hate, but I don't find it really scary and I don't really gravitate to books that deal with possession. However, I've seen some good reviews about it and I've read that the ending is very like disturbing or something. So let me know if you've read this one because I'm still open to trying it if it's meant to be really good, or if there's any other Anya Alborn books which I should read. If I've already read Brother and loved it, then let me know. Last few now, so these are the most recent ones that I got rid of. The first is Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. This one sounded really fun. It only came out this year and it's about this true crime obsessed bookseller who develops a dangerous obsession with a colleague. However, I heard that these two characters are kind of annoying. They're very tropey. I think actually I watched Michaela Reed's again, her video where she talked about this book and she said that it was very like pick me vibes, OTT, just unlikable, and also lots of like serial killer name dropping and just like talking about true crime a lot. Yeah, I just don't think I'm into that anymore, so I got rid of that one when I heard her review. This video appears to be very heavily influenced by Michaela Reed's. I think it was also her review of Sundial and possibly even Night Bitch that had me remove these from my TBR. I think it was her. So Michaela just de-influences me all day long apparently. So the next one that I got rid of is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead, which is a shame because if you watched my last wrap-up video, you'll know that I read The Last Housewife, which I gave 2 stars. But before that I read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars and I really loved it. I think I gave it 4.5 actually. And then I saw that this one was like a gothic southern book and it sounded kind of fun, but I've seen that it is heavily focused on Twilight and I just can't cope with that. I never really got into Twilight when I was younger. I was more into like Hunger Games, Maze Runner, Divergent, like the heavy like dystopia books. I was never really into the fantasy books. I know that the Twilight references are gonna just annoy me, especially with apparently how much it is referenced. I think every YouTuber that I've seen who's read this book has given it like a 1 or 2 stars and they all say that the Twilight references are heavy. So even if you like Twilight, this might be a little bit too much for you. So yeah, I got rid of that one. Apparently it's very slow, there's no plot, and it's got a really weird ending. So there's nothing to bring me back to this book. I think that one is just gone. I don't think I ever want to read that. And then the last one that I got rid of was The Death I Gave Him by MX Lou. This one is a retelling of Hamlet as a locked room thriller, but it also has a sci-fi twist to it apparently. I think I first heard about this from Ashley's Little Library. I think she talked about it in one of her upcoming releases videos and it sounded really fun. But then I saw Books and Lala read this and I think she gave it like a 3-star, or she gave it a 2 actually. I've never read Hamlet, so the Shakespeare retelling doesn't appeal to me at all. I'd probably miss quite a lot of the references. I've heard that it doesn't really come together as one like cohesive thing as like sci-fi, thriller and retelling. So I'm just no longer interested in reading it, to be honest. I've just been kind of put off. I think that is all of the books that I have. Well, it's not all, I've not written all of them down, but that's all the ones that I know that I've had on my TBR and now I've got rid of them. Let me know if there's any on this list that you think I should read, that I would enjoy, and also let me know some of the books that you've had on your TBR and that you've since got rid of for whatever reason. I do think it's really interesting to hear what other people have decided not to read. But yeah, I feel like life is too short to be forcing yourself to read books that you're just not interested in anymore. So I hope this video has given you a little bit of inspiration to go through your own Goodreads TBR and get rid of some of those books that have been sat there for ages and ages, or from your own physical shelves. Give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!